I desperately need to discuss this goat man with you. Welcome back, folks. I'm Zandy, and I want to show you this team that was inspired by Wanqing, this bizarre flag bearer vanguard unit that has this interesting combination of effects. So I'll read you the effects. I'm going to show you the team in combat after explaining its basic concept, and then we'll go over the whole team. If you haven't played Arknights before, hopefully this will be followable and an interesting path to an interesting kind of build making. And if you have, well, this is my draft of an interesting team archetype that I hope you'll give a try. So first, let me read you Wanqing's skill. It's his skill 2. It says, stops attacking, gradually recovers 20 deployment points in total that let you deploy your other units faster in this tower defense game. While skill is active, restores the HP of surrounding allied operators, including Wanqing, by 25% of Wanqing's attack every second, and increases their attack speed by 25 if they're deployed facing the same direction as Wanqing. Now, Wanqing himself is a flag bearer vanguard, which means he doesn't even have any block during his skill anyway. You deploy him on the ground, but he can't attack or block while using that skill. So it doesn't really matter what direction he is facing. But indeed, having a bunch of units, if you put a bunch of units near him to benefit from that attack speed and healing, having them all face the same way, not so great in theory. Which is why I'm using this effect with Goldenglow, who has an effect that makes her attack range global. There's currently one other unit that does something similar. Ambriel also gets global attack range during the uptime of her skill, and Ambriel is nice here because even though her damage output is much inferior to Goldenglow's, she has a talent that gives her a chance to stun enemies for 3 seconds, a long time, when attacking outside her normal attack range. Her uptime is also really, really good. This skill doesn't have very many skill points. It's only 25 seconds to charge, and then it's got 40 seconds of uptime, so I still think she's a very good fit. I'm going to show you an auto deploy of me using the team, and I'll explain it as I go. Sorry, Bagpipe and Inez, for covering up your faces. You'll get plenty of screen time later. So we're going to use Wanqing and other vanguards to gain a ton of deployment points really quickly, to deploy Goldenglow and Ambriel, and boost their attack speed and keep them healed and topped off, while they plink away at enemies anywhere all over the map. You can see that this map, like a lot of Arknights maps, contains a few enemies that are just kind of sitting around too, so they're always going to have a target. If they can be attacking globally, they will always be able to get value out of those attacks. You can see me very quickly deploying Ambriel, Goldenglow, and other units near Wanqing, facing the same direction as him. Here I've got him facing right, so they're facing right, but it's mostly just to guard the blue defense box, just in case anything gets by while their skills are inactive. And you can see that then the idea is to sync up all the skill activations to get Wanqing, Ambriel, and Goldenglow's bars. Ooh, it's very satisfying to see them all charging all together, such that once they're ready to go, I can activate Ambriel, then Goldenglow, then Wanqing, and have them attack everything all over the map with increased speed. And there they go, they're off. Well, you see other units that I haven't deployed in that tight little box at the objective, my little base camp, are mostly just slowing down enemies on the peripheral. You can see Ethan on the right binding enemies in place, and Mostema on the left stunning those big enemies that are spawning and taking a big chip out of their health, so that Ambriel and Goldenglow don't need to be chipping away at every single enemy when they're moving pretty fast. That's another reason I wanted to use this example. You can see by default, these enemies, like a lot of enemies in Arknights, move pretty quick on a small map, so you would need a lot of zone control, if you will, to keep them under control, and that's most of what the rest of the team is. Pretty straightforward, right? So here's the team, and I will briefly overview why everybody else is here. This is just my version of it. But you can see where I was going with this. The idea of having a team where you kind of set up a combo and then you go, it feels very self-centered at first. You're not really interested in what is in the mission. You just want units that obliterate the mission's difficulty no matter where enemies spawn. In fact, this isn't a terrible team to go into missions blind with. If you don't know what is going to spawn in the mission, Goldenglow and Ambriel can make sure that you can hit enemies even if you don't deploy a unit in a spot where you kind of really should, I guess if you want to say. You can use the team like this to cover up mistakes. But I've found that this team is much more fun as I played it more. Honestly, I did make it initially for that previous reason, but as I played it more, I noticed that I ended up having more fun with it when I was kind of fighting against the level design, trying to get off my combo, like in a competitive trading card game, to sort of achieve dominance with my combo before the game's disruption kind of messed me up. So the team is here to do that, basically. I want to construct a team full of units that provide action, you know, they damage enemies or they're proactive, not just supporting Goldenglow and Ambriel, but which also have some little quality that makes this combo stronger in some way. And so that's the goal. Throughout all the rest of these units, you're going to see I'm trying to pick up little benefits for that central combo while keeping the units like active and useful for normal gameplay. We started with my key Vanguard Wanqing, but I'm bringing 3 other Vanguards, a little more than I would usually bring, to accelerate the team really quickly at the start of each mission. So let's go over them. First, we got Bagpipe. Bagpipe here might be a little bit tiresome for people who play Arknights a lot because she's so ubiquitous, and the reason for that is this talent. It's the second one, Martial Tradition. So it says when this unit is in the squad, all Vanguard operators gain 8 initial skill points, including Bagpipe. When deployed, Bagpipe gains 4 additional skill points on top of that. So she gets 12, everybody else gets 8. This is really powerful. This means that other Vanguards that generate deployment points to accelerate your entire deployment for your whole mission get to do whatever they're going to do to accelerate your deployment points 8 seconds faster. 8 deployment points, 1 deployment point per second, so 8 seconds faster. This really adds up with only a few Vanguards, and it also means that they can be used for utility later in the mission. Bagpipe's own skill 3. Oh, game designers, what's this? You've given a unit that can be deployed completely for free an ability that makes her a powerful, fast redeploying assassin? What? There must be some mistake. How can you do this to me? Before I get too upset, let's move on to Texas, an example of where this is valuable. So on the surface, Texas is just a Vanguard that has an ability that generates DP, and you can see that this ability has a 30 DP skill point starting cost and a 40 skill point cost to use. So normally you need to wait 10 seconds for this to be used after you deploy her. But with Bagpipe, I only need to wait 2 seconds after you deploy her. So even outside of just making me get the DP from the skill faster, this means that later in the mission, if I undeploy Texas once I have enough DP, I can drop her back in and use her as a kind of stun grenade by just using this skill immediately and then undeploying her, or she'll just get killed or whatever, it's fine. In the early game, she also provides a lot of speed ups herself. She reduces her first deployment cost by 4, so down to 8, and she gives the squad 2 initial DP just by being there, so down to 6 if you use the DP on her. So she nets you 6 deployment points almost immediately. She costs 12, but reduces her own cost and gives you some initial DP, and then she restores 12, so you end up netting 6 deployment points, and you get a big damage nuke stun thing. The other benefit of Texas is she's a block 2. It's not a huge deal, but this team, as you'll see, has very little for ground units, and they almost all have block 1, so it is kind of nice to have a block 2 unit around. Bagpipe during her skill has 2 block, but there's just not that much, so it's good to have around. Inez, probably the most normal unit in the squad, or the least related to what this team is doing. She just has a very powerful skill 2 with Bagpipe. It's got 15 initial skill points and then a 20 skill point cost, so you can use it immediately, literally instantly with Bagpipe, and it makes her invisible. So if you can deploy her and you need an enemy to get attacked, she's got a little bit of range too, so she can kind of go over a wall or through a melee operator. You can put a tank in front of her and put her behind and have her attack something. And she can do a lot of damage. She provides herself 2 separate multipliers, attack, and then she steals attack speed. And her deployment point generation is usually it's offensive for this archetype, so it's when she attacks, she generates DP. She can be left out if there are targets that you are just sitting there ready to be attacked and generate a lot of DP. But the main benefit is she just provides a lot of damage while initially giving you a good amount of deployment points back. You're certainly going to pay back her 10 deployment point cost pretty easily with this skill. And her kind of secret benefit for this team is actually this second talent. Shadow Sentry. Enemies within attack range lose invisibility and have minus 30% movement speed. After retreating, Inez lives behind a Shadow Sentry, which is a thing that has the same effect, but can't be attacked or removed. So this means that when you deploy Inez somewhere, she leaves behind an area, a little 3-tile area, her range you can see at the bottom left, that reveals invisible and makes enemies a lot slower. You can put this where enemies that are invisible are spawning to kind of stuff them. As they spawn, they'll be revealed, and then Ambriel and Goldenglow can attack them. So very, very useful utility, even though she is pretty generically good. This is one of the stronger units in the game overall. If you were to pick a unit that would be good on any random team, I would pick Ina's almost first, maybe literally first out of every unit in the game, sure. But she is very specifically good on this team. Again, she speeds up deployment, but she's a fast redeploy assassin, and she provides some kind of utility to the team. She lets Goldenglow and Ambriel attack invisible enemies, and she also slows enemies in an area, and there's no way to remove that. Let's cover the other kind of stun grenade type of units I have, or units that stop enemies from moving as freely in a little area. So Texas the Omertosa, the other version of Texas, a big area stun, very much like the skill 2 on Texas I just showed you. The benefit here is just that she's a very fast redeploy. You can do this every 20 or 30 seconds. This is a big old stun map control grenade that you throw across the battlefield, and it'll be very easy to repeatedly redeploy Texas because we have Wanqing cranking out DP in the center of the battlefield, as you saw. Not really anything to say. Again, this is one of the better units in the game overall, but the existence of this unit in some way validates the idea of this archetype. We're not really playing very much on the board. I'm just going to set up a camp that will snipe everything, and then if I need it, I need some assassins to come in and deal with units that get through. Texas is the exact definition of that. We're basically on the slowing or enemy control area, so I'm going to do U official next as well. This is a bizarre unit. She's the April Fool's unit. She ignores the deployment limit, and she's a bard operator. These are normally area healing over time units. She has a very low attack value. They heal based on their attack. So she heals for a truly abysmal, maybe 11 HP per second. Not a significant heal. That's not why she's here. She's here for this weirdo talent. Ah yes, short-circuiting genius. Less likely to be attacked. After being deployed for a certain duration, it's like a few seconds. Stuns other units within range for 6 seconds. Now, it includes allies. That's the April Fool's part. But the benefit here is that she ignores the deployment limit and provides a 6-second stun. I don't know what the problem is, except that normally this would make it difficult to stun a unit that was in range of your other units without stunning your other units. She's a ranged deployment operator. So if a melee unit is walking up a lane and you have a ranged unit that can attack that unit, you'd like to keep the melee unit invading you in place so that your ranged unit can keep attacking, right? But because this stuns allies, it's often the case that you can't place her such that she will only stun the enemy. However, this team clusters all of its damage dealers in a little camp in the center and doesn't put anything near the enemies. I have global attack range, so it doesn't matter if they get stunned. They won't get stunned, and usually you can use her as a big 6-second stun grenade on a big tanky enemy in the corner of the map where none of your units are anywhere near. The other benefit is she ignores the deployment limit, and this team is a combo-focused team. Every single unit on the team is going to be deployed every single match, and I'm going to have no deployment slots left. I know that. The team is designed that way. So I know that if I bring a unit that doesn't ignore the deployment limit, I just won't have room for them without losing the team some big utility. So she's kind of perfect here. Another unit that comes to mind if you don't have or want to use U official would be Thermal. He has this big explosion thing where he does modest damage, but then he applies Fragile. Enemies take 30% more damage. That type of effect would, I'm sure, be very solid here too. He ignores the deployment limit. Okay, Ethan. Ethan is an ambusher, so he's a melee unit with a square-ish range. And Ethan's big thing is that when fully maxed out, he can use his skill 2 to bind enemies for a very long time. His skill 2 says it increases the chance to trigger his talent to 3 times, and his talent is a 28% chance to bind enemies for 3.5 seconds. He attacks in an AoE around himself, so this can pretty easily, it's got like a 90-ish% chance, right, to lock enemies in place for basically the whole duration of the skill. We'll get into this a little bit more in a minute, but the other good thing about Suspended Cross is having these defensive skills where you hold enemies in a spot or slow enemies down. You've seen already there's a good amount of stuns and slows on the team so far, and we're getting to more in a minute. What I want from them is to make sure that they can cover the time that Ambriel, Goldenglow, and Wanqing are down. I don't want it to be that they work, they slow enemies down, but they won't have the uptime or they won't fit well with my rotation. You know what I mean? This skill is perfect. It's a little bit cheaper than my damage skills that have global range. So I can just wait till they're off, use it, and then hold enemies in place until my global damage is back on again. Imagine if you put them in a little camp in the center like you saw, and then you put Ethan way in the corner where enemies are spawning. Just use him to pause enemy progress while your global attackers are recharging. Perfect. And of course, the other person that really helps with that is Mostema. You saw her on the left side when I showed you that demo. This unit pulls a lot of weight here. I probably should have given her more credit and put her earlier. All caster operators get skill points 40% faster. So Goldenglow gets her skill back 40% faster. Goldenglow's downtime is reduced by 40%. This also applies to Mostema herself, so her own skills happen faster. And subjective time dilation with the module. This slows enemies in her attack range, but with the module upgrade, it also slows enemies all over the map, always, by 18%. This is not resistible either. Like, this just affects everything no matter where it is. They can be invisible, they can be enemies immune to normal debuffs. This just affects everything. This gives you 20% more time to get your skills back. In a way, the benefit here is that Mostema is basically giving you 2 separate multipliers for skill up time. She makes enemies take a total of 20% longer to get to the objective, and she makes your skill point generation during your downtime 40% faster. Oh, would you look at that? She also has a skill that's a 7-second stun. Finishing up, we have Angelina. Angelina is one of the more fringe units on the team. She just does the exact combination of things I was looking for. She's not particularly that great at any of them, but she has the qualities that fit the bill. Again, with her skill 3 here, Arcane Staff Anti-Gravity mode has about the same skill cycle time as Ethan's Suspended Cross, and thus it can be used to kind of match against the skill downtime of your global attack range stuff. When Ambriel and Goldenglow are down and recharging, you can use this to slow 5 enemies at once. She's a D-cell binder, so her attack's slow by default, and that can keep enemies at bay. While she isn't using this skill, she can't attack, but that's where her talents come in. Everybody gets attack speed and HP regeneration per second when the skill is not active. So I like this. It's not active all the time, but you choose to deactivate it. It's not active only when her skill's active, it's active only when it's not active. So if you need the healing, you can just do nothing and you keep it. It's not a huge amount of healing. I just trash talked you official for having like 11 HP regen per second, but I find that this is just enough that on top of Wanqing's healing for your key units, you can kind of get away with no healers. And again, like I was saying at the top of the video, I want to fill the team with things that support the combo but are as much action as possible as well. So I managed to get a small attack speed buff, a damage increase for my whole team. For my whole team too, not just Ambriel and Goldenglow, which is nice. On top of having a slow ability when I need it as a panic button, while kind of fulfilling the role of having a healer. Compared to other options, I certainly feel like she's offering more if this is little enough healing that you can get away with it. You know what I mean? But if they're dying, obviously you just need to pick a healer. There's a whole archetype of healers that are basically like lifesteal. So they fire attacks, and then when their attack does damage, it heals an ally within range. Kind of weird ally lifesteal units. Incantation medics, and some of them do have crowd control. That's really similar to what I'm using Angelina for right now, but they don't heal everyone everywhere. They only heal when they have a target. Their crowd control might be a little bit less good. You know, it's a slow, but it's not as long, this skill. So, but anyway, that's why she's here. Finally, we have Aya. Aya Fiala is a arts damage burst unit, but she's a placeholder here. There's a unit coming in Arknights that is going to be our 3rd kind of regular global attacker, and she's going to go in this slot when she arrives, and I've saved the currency to get her immediately. That, I think, will make the team a lot more robust, and better yet, she's a caster, so she gets the benefit of Mostema's skill point regeneration, so we'd have 2 that are getting the benefit. Now, Ambriel does not get the benefit of that skill point regen, but her skill has better cycle time. It's got a lower skill point cost and a longer duration, so really having the skill point uptime just increases how much their cycles match up. Basically, it just makes Goldenglow and Ambriel have kind of the same uptime. So not increasing Ambriel's is kind of fine. Then you can boost them both with Wanqing, or all 3 of them, you know, once I have the 3rd. So that's the team. You could do a lot of other things. There are a few other units that kind of fit the theme of attack outside your range. The one that comes to mind is Fartooth. She's actually got 2 skills that do this. She has a skill 2 that lets her attack blocked enemies outside of attack range. I don't think this really fits the theme. Enemies that you can't block in a corner, which is why you want the global attack range. You often can't deploy on those ground tiles. It will often be on blocked ground tiles, or again, they're in some weird spot. The whole thing is you didn't foresee them being in that area, or it's hard to get to that area. So it feels kind of counterintuitive to base a team like this on attacking blocked enemies outside attack range. You probably won't be able to block them then. Don't get me wrong, I think that this skill can be really strong, and Fartooth is kind of an interesting unit in general. I could think of a lot of situations where you get a main area and then like a side lane to defend, and maybe you put a unit to tank that lane, and when they need help, you can pop this skill and help them out. It's called ally support. I feel like that is more the use of this skill, not to give her global feeling range, but just to sort of change her position slightly. It's a very interesting ability, but I don't think it fits the bill. And then, of course, she has her skill 3. Attack range changes to an infinitely long straight line ahead. That's delightful. But again, this is almost the opposite. Again, you're counting on having a tile that's not awkward, resulting in you wanting to have unlimited attack range. You're counting on having a tile that's perfect, in the exact perfect spot, so you can deploy her with an infinitely straight line connecting to where you want to attack. Again, not unrelated. If you like the idea of this global attack team, you might be interested in this unit, but I don't think she's good in the same ways as that team is. So, one of the wonderful things is that this is a what is called a welfare unit in these games a lot of the time. He's free. You don't roll randomly for him or have to wait until he comes around. He's free on an event that will become available all the time soon enough. And so you can just get him and do this if you want to. You can get him and then borrow someone else's Goldenglow, and Ambriel is a 4-star, so basically guaranteed. You'll have her within days of starting the game. And you can basically do the core of this theme with whatever filler you want to use to slow enemies down, with all sorts of combinations of units. I could see a version of this theme where you block really heavily and heal a lot, for example. I don't think that's a bad idea. Just stall and then have this be how you do damage. You don't have to worry about your very few damage dealers, all you can fit because your whole team is stalling. You wouldn't have to worry about them being in the right range of the threats that appear. As long as you put a bunch of defenders and healers everywhere, they can just get to it with their global attack range. That could be a cool way to do this theme, and you could do it with much more common units, I guess. So it could be interesting. If you do that, tell me. That sounds cool, but not my style. I've built no tanks. That's actually the reason. Anyway, hope you enjoyed it. I've been Zandy. Talk to you soon.